We hopped up early to go out to the outside deck to watch the ferry arrive. I think we all had a pretty bad sleep down in the motorhome, and we all seemed to wake up at about 6 a.m. It was dark when we first got out to the deck, but after about an hour of waiting, there was a glow on the horizon, and soon we arrived at the uninviting Brindisi port.
The first town we went to in Italy was called Alberobello. The town was like a fantasy town in movies, and the little houses had pointy roofs. We found a spot to busk and played some tunes before going back to the motorhome and leaving. After a long drive, we parked on top of a hill near Matera, ready to go for a walk the next day.
Up until the 1950s and 60s, Matera was one of the poorest places in Italy because the living conditions were terrible. Half of the babies born there died, and the children begged on the streets for medicine. The Sassi, the prehistoric part of the town's housing, originated in a prehistoric troglodyte settlement. These dwellings are thought to be among the first ever human settlements in what is now Italy. Many of them are little more than small caverns, and in some parts of the Sassi, a street lies on top of another group of houses. In the 1950s, as part of a policy to clear the extreme poverty of the town, the government of Italy used force to relocate most of the population of the Sassi to a new housing area in the city.
In the morning, we drove to a park in the modern part of Matera. We went for a walk to a place across the gorge from the town, and we could see it very well. We soon started our walk into the old town and found it very interesting because the buildings were pretty much all a golden yellow colour. We walked down to the caves that people used to live in. We walked back up to where the town was busy and did a little bit of busking.
$29.49 with this too.
$29.49 each. How much each?
Yeah, now can we get
25.
25 each. It's pretty good going.
Yeah, now give me 40.
We're just on our way to Pompeii and we're encountering some heavy traffic. There's a lot of rubbish in Italy. It's quite disgusting, really. Look at all this.
We watched a quick documentary about Pompeii before driving to a car park. We stood on the huge cobbled stones that you stood on when it was raining, and we saw some wheel grooves that the carts had made. Pompeii is almost just as it was 2,000 years ago when Mount Vesuvius erupted. It froze a moment in time when everybody was living the last few moments of their lives. The ash covered the bodies, and after they decayed, a space was left where the body had been. Scientists filled the spaces with plaster and made a replica of them. Pompeii, along with Herculaneum and many other villages in the surrounding area, were buried around 4.6 metres of volcanic ash and pumice in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. Most of Pompeii was excavated in 1950.
After leaving Pompeii, we drove up to Mount Vesuvius. We decided it was too expensive to walk to the top, but we stayed the night on the mountain anyway. The next day we drove to Monte Cassino.
Monte Cassino. All of these graves here are New Zealanders. And then in the distance there's a mixture of Canadians and Indians and South Africans.
The battle for Monte Cassino was probably the bloodiest and most costly battle in the whole war. The point of the battle was to capture the monastery on top of the hill because it was the main observation point the Germans were using in the Gustav Line. 240,000 men, 1,900 tanks, and 4,000 planes were used in the whole battle. It was the worst thing that could have happened in the war. The soldiers fighting the Germans thought that they were using the monastery for a defence. On the 15th of February, American bombers dropped 1,400 tons of high explosives, flattening the monastery. The raid failed to achieve its objective as German paratroopers then occupied the rubble and established excellent defensive positions in the ruins.
Hey, Aisling, what's that?
Oh, so I'll put sticks under here, and then I'll put sand over the top of it, and then I'll try to shape that into a hexagon, but it didn't really work out how I wanted it to work out. So, I'll sand this bit off, and yeah, there's the castle, and yeah, and that's the drawbridge that we made.
Oh, listen, Aisling, that's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah,
Jeez.
cheese.
Well, that's cool for today, isn't it?
Yeah.
We managed to swim with.
What's that, Wayne?
I say, well, beaches are wet and sandy. Sunday, you're so very dandy.
We drove along the coast and arrived at our park spot at Spurlonger Beach. We went for a swim and lounged around on the beach before going back to the motorhome, which had 1 million flies buzzing around it.
Let's go party. Yeah. Let's go party.
Alright, we're just coming in through the outer reaches of Rome, so we're headed towards the centre, where we're going to do a bit of a speedy tour around the city centre.
After finding what we thought was a safe park where we wouldn't be robbed, we walked into Rome and made our way down to the Vatican City. There was lots of statues around the outside. We walked on past the annoying street vendors who were selling transformer cars. We walked through the masses of people toward the Pantheon and arrived. I still wonder how the roof does not just fall in and collapse with all of that weight. The part that was under the massive skylight was cordoned off, and the church was packed with tourists who were taking photos. We kept walking to the Trevi Fountain and all through 2 cents, and I'm going to be a bit annoyed if for some reason I don't come back here one day. We made our way through the narrow streets to the Colosseum.
We were walking past a very boring looking building with guards out the front of it. We asked a man what it was and found out that it was where the president worked. We wandered down through ancient Rome towards the Colosseum and looked at the ruins of the old buildings. There were a lot of columns lying around, and you could see the old sewer drains in the ground. After walking for 6 hours, our feet were aching, so we headed to the motorhome.
Can somebody tell me what these are?
These are, well, we were walking around Rome today. We walked past this guy who was spray painting pictures.
Yep.
And he gave us a good price on them, so we bought some.
Yeah.
And we've each got one.
Cool.
Daniel and I've got one.
Well, they'll look good on your wall one day.
It's probably not Qantas, just because it's got a red tail with a white thing on it.
Aren't you supposed to be doing spelling?
Too bad. Got bored. Back to miscellaneous.
No,
Miscellaneous.
MISCELLANEOUS.
Yeah, overrated.